This is WAB's Week in Review. I'm Alex Helmick, managing editor of WAB News. Coming up on the show, we'll have more on the political future of lame duck Governor Brian Kemp. But first, more on how federal cuts will impact Georgians. Federal funding from overdose prevention, think medicine like Narcan, could be facing cuts from the Trump administration. That comes as Georgia is seeing progress in its effort to fight opioid deaths, helped by increasing access to the overdose reversal drug. WAB's Jess Mador reports.
The drug, known by brand name Narcan, is credited with preventing hundreds of thousands of overdose deaths a year nationwide. And with overdose deaths beginning to drop, Georgia advocates say it's critical to maintain access to Narcan, along with addiction treatment and recovery services. A Trump administration budget document outlines potential cuts that could eliminate federal funding for Narcan programs. Officials from Georgia's Department of Public Health say its stockpile of Narcan was purchased using other funding sources and wouldn't be affected by the cuts, but it's unclear how they'd affect supplies at other agencies, including the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. Jess Mador, WABE News.
Well, a research center based at Morehouse School of Medicine dedicated to the health of Black children and their families could lose its federal funding. WABE's Christopher Alston had more.
The National African American Child and Family Research Center is funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Last week, an employee at the federal agency mistakenly sent an email to dozens of people that included plans to cut grants for more than 150 projects related to child safety net programs. Included on the list was the research center at Morehouse School of Medicine. In an email to WABE, a spokesperson for the school said they had not received notice concerning funding for the program, but they were reviewing the situation. And they underscored the importance of medical research in keeping people healthy. An HHS spokesperson told WABE the information shared in that email was outdated. Christopher Alston, WABE News.
After Hurricane Helene devastated Georgia communities, members of a federal volunteer program swept in to help out. But last month, tens of thousands of young people serving across the country were sent home after cuts to Americorps. WAB's Melissa Fado had that story.
22-year-old Madeline Benson from Roswell joined Americorps' National Civilian Community Corps, or NCCC, after withdrawing from college her junior year. She'd be deployed around the country, living on a few dollars a day. In November, she was sent to Valdosta.
Get up at 6 a.m., leave by like 7:30, get to these homes, and then you're just chainsawing all day.
As a fellow Georgian, she says she was proud to do the hard work.
It was often people that had really no resources to get rid of this destruction. It was like veterans that we were helping, people with disabilities.
Last month, while serving in Asheville, North Carolina, she was brought into a meeting.
We now have to immediately leave our job sites. You need to tell your project sponsors that this is what's happening. You have to leave. You need to go home and pack.
She was 30 days shy of the end of her service term. About 750 people make up NCCC, but roughly 65,000 Americorps members total work in schools, food pantries, and other nonprofits. Now that's been halved.
So since early April, $400 million in grants that supported nearly 33,000 Americorps members and seniors volunteers have been terminated.
Kristen Bennett is CEO of the Service Year Alliance. She says communities will feel the loss.
I guarantee that they are going to know that there's no longer someone there offering the literacy tutoring to their child. They're going to wonder why food bank shelves are empty.
Bennett says on top of that, about 85% of staff have been let go, putting Americorps' future in question. Melissa Fato, WABE News.
Scientists in coastal Georgia are worried about proposed cuts to funding for climate change modeling and other research, though it's too soon to understand the full impact. WABE's Emily Jones reported the story.
President Donald Trump's recent budget request to Congress includes billions of dollars of cuts to the National Science Foundation and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which pay for key research and programs in Georgia. Clark Alexander of the University of Georgia's Skidaway Institute of Oceanography says the proposed cuts to the NSF would harm the research done at institutions like UGA and Georgia Tech.
The curiosity-driven research that doesn't necessarily have a payoff tomorrow, but may form the building blocks for great advances that might occur over the next decade or so.
And Alexander says some of the proposed cuts would hit closer to home for Georgia's coastal economy.
The Georgia Sea Grant program has been the driving force behind developing aquaculture in our state.
That is, the state's burgeoning homegrown oyster industry.
They've also worked with shrimpers. They've worked with people that work on the water in a variety of different ways.
This budget is just a proposal. It still has to go through Congress, and many cuts are likely to be challenged in court. That will be a lengthy process. And in the meantime, Alexander says the disruption could have long-term impacts.
In some ways, we're slowing down the development and the training and the handing off of management and research to a new generation.
And he says the cuts will also make it harder to explain important science to the public. Emily Jones, WABE News.
This story is part of a partnership with GRIST, and so is this next one from Emily Jones. Climate scientists are raising concerns here in Georgia about federal changes they say could make it harder to access data and hurt our understanding of climate change.
Every 4 years, a group of scientists from across the country puts out a behemoth of a report called the National Climate Assessment, taking stock of all the most recent research on climate change and laying out the current and future impacts. It's a huge undertaking that takes a lot of time.
As soon as one is published, the next group is already starting.
UGA climatologist Pam Knox was one of the authors of the last assessment. The Trump administration has dismissed the authors of the next report, due out in 2027. Knox says that will make it harder for Georgia leaders to understand the most critical threats to the region.
If we don't have good information about that, it's very difficult to respond to what's likely to be occurring. If you can't respond, you're going to have more economic losses.
Other recent changes worry Knox, too. Regional climate centers that provide key information about past weather to everyone from farmers to electric companies to historians briefly went offline last month due to a lapse in their federal funding. Databases full of information on ocean currents, estuaries, and the Earth's geology are becoming harder to access. Fewer weather balloons are going up. Knox says changes like this will make things harder for both researchers like her and forecasters at the National Weather Service.
It's not like they're going to go away, but they're just going to be hampered in their ability to do the best job that they could.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration did not respond to a request for comment, but has previously said it remains committed to providing timely information, research, and resources. The White House did not respond to questions from NPR about the National Climate Assessment. Emily Jones, WABE News.
You're listening to WABE's Week in Review with me, Alex Helmick. Well, two-term Georgia Governor Brian Kemp says he's passing on running for the U.S. Senate in next year's midterm elections, a blow to Republicans who spent months courting him to challenge Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff. WABE's Sam Greenglass reported on what Kemp's decision illustrates about the fight for the Senate in 2026.
All spring, politicians, journalists, and strategists have eagerly awaited Kemp's decision.
Obviously, I have a lot of people reaching out to me. I'm going to just try to get, a little bit of downtime where I can to kind of think through things, and then we'll keep people posted.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune met with Kemp and his wife last month in Atlanta. Senator Pete Ricketts, a former governor himself, spoke with Kemp several times. Of the states Trump won in 2024, Georgia's the only one with a Democratic senator up for re-election. Republicans see Georgia as their top pickup opportunity and saw Kemp as their strongest candidate.
You can't hardly name another Republican who took on Trump and won and is still beloved by Republicans. It's absolutely without parallel.
Republican strategist Brian Robinson referring there to 2020 when Kemp rebuffed Trump's plea for help overturning the election result. Trump then backed a primary challenge against the governor, who Kemp trounced. Before the end of the 2024 presidential campaign, the two men reconciled. Democrats hope Trump's second-term actions will boost them in the midterms. Ossoff began his re-election bid last month with strong words about the president.
Georgia will bow to no king.
An Atlanta Journal-Constitution poll last week found Kemp in a dead heat with Ossoff, who led other Republicans polled by a healthy margin.
Ossoff's people are smart. They know that the best player on the field has sidelined himself. I'm envisioning corks popping and loud celebratory yells.
Kemp posted on X this week that running next year was not the right decision for him and his family. Steve Wrigley was chief of staff to the late Georgia Governor Zell Miller, who then went on to the Senate but declined to run for re-election.
He told me once, he said, I just don't have the personality where I want to be here for 20 years in hopes of becoming a subcommittee chairman.
Wrigley was in his garden when I gave him a call.
I'm down to the last 4 packs of zinnia seeds, and I'm done.
He told me going from powerful chief executive to one of 100 in a polarized, sometimes paralyzed Senate was difficult for his old boss.
I think it was Joe Biden, who was in the Senate at the time, told him, a lot of you governors just have difficulty transitioning into being a senator.
That dynamic is more pronounced today. In Michigan, Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer declined to run for an open Senate seat. Colorado Democratic Senator Michael Bennet is running for governor. And in New Hampshire, Republican Governor Chris Sununu, another top GOP recruit, passed on a run for Senate. Jay Morgan, a veteran of Georgia GOP politics, says Congress has ceded a lot of power to the president.
Trump is just manhandling the Congress right now. The Congress has never been more irrelevant.
In Georgia, the GOP Senate field had been frozen until now. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene are among the Republicans not ruling out a run. A few hours after turning down the race, Kemp addressed donors at his annual Sea Island retreat. Morgan says he's among the Kemp supporters disappointed by the decision.
But I don't think anybody can be mad about it because this guy has been a true workhorse in American politics.
And skipping a run now doesn't mean Kemp's career will end when he leaves office in 2027. Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock is up for re-election in 2028. Also up for grabs that year, the White House. For NPR News, I'm Sam Greenglass in Atlanta.
The Atlanta Police Department wants to spend its share of the city's fiscal year 2026 budget on more staff and technology upgrades as it gets ready to host a handful of major events. WAB's Shemaine Cruz had more.
In about an hour and a half budget briefing with the Atlanta City Council, Police Chief Darren Shearbaum painted a bright picture for how his department used last year's budget.
We have seen notable successes around hiring, technology adoption and optimization, as well as the delivery and activation of the Public Safety Training Center.
He wants to build on that momentum. The mayor's budget gives APD $308 million. $50 million more than the previous fiscal year. That's about 1/3 of the city budget. Shearbaum says some of that money would go toward things like purchasing more take-home patrol cars, expanding the care unit for non-emergency calls, digitizing the ticket writing process, and boosting recruitment efforts, like in this now viral video on social media.
After the second part!
The video shows officers sporting cowboy hats and fans that read, "Join ATLPD," while they dance and sing along to the song Boots on the Ground by 803 Fresh. Here's Shearbaum again.
Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this is the budget that's going to get us to the World Cup. And so it's going to be here before you know it. In 13 months, we will be here. But this is the budget that will allow us to equip our officers for that time, that deployment, the uniform, the supplies they will need as we welcome everyone here.
APD currently has more than 1,700 sworn officers, including recruits. The public can weigh in on the proposed budget at a hearing on May 21st, before the City Council passes a final version in June. Shemaine Cruz, WABE News.
And finally today, commissioners in Coweta County have voted to approve rezoning for a massive data center project called Project Peach. As WAB's Dormaya Vance reported, some county residents are protesting the move.
Project Peach is an 8-building data center campus that will span over 2 million square feet. It's proposed for an unincorporated part of the county, but the city of Palmetto sits less than a mile away.
There's a long-standing view that Palmetto is sort of this lost town.
That's resident Jennifer Taylor. She believes the county is leaving the city out of conversations around the data center.
Coweta commissioners are like, well, it's just Palmetto. Either they won't fight it or they won't care.
The commission approved the Measure 3-2 rezoning the site to a light industrial area. The move came with conditions including noise limits and waste mitigation plans. However, county documents state Coweta's comprehensive plan doesn't support the rezoning. Here's Commissioner John Reitelbach during a public meeting in April.
In my eyes, this would be an industrial area. That's just my opinion. It's an industrial area because of everything that surrounds the current developments that are there right now.
Several neighbors in Palmetto made their opposition very clear during the meeting, citing concerns around traffic and proximity to downtown. Among those who spoke was Palmetto Mayor Teresa Thomas Smith.
This decision would fundamentally alter the character of our community. We have no desire to see a massive industrial facility less than 1 mile from our historic downtown.
Project Peach will be built in phases over 10 years. Project representatives say they are unsure what data will be housed in the facility once completed. For now, Palmetto officials say they hope to work with the county as plans for the project unfold. Darmaya Vance, WABE News.
And a quick note here, we are launching a data center series called Server South. What's powering Atlanta's data center growth and what it means for you. It starts on Monday, so listen in then, or next week, check it out at wabe.org/data centers. That's all for the show this week. My thanks to the WAB News team for another great series of stories. I'm Alex Helmick. Thank you for supporting WABE and for listening to the Week in Review.